welcome back to Katie's Favorite Recipes. Today I'm going to be making pot roast in my pressure cooker. This was so good, it was so tender and full of flavor. I think you all are going to love it. So let's go ahead and get started now. Starting off, the first thing I'm going to do is go to my pressure cooker and I'm going to turn it on the saute function and let it start heating up. I'm also going to be adding some olive oil to the bottom of my pot. While that's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and start seasoning my chuck roast. So this is almost a 3-pound chuck roast and I'm using Montreal steak seasoning and I've just coated all the sides in that really well. You can use any seasoning on this that you like, but that is just my preferred seasoning. We're going to sear this on each side and the ends about 3 to 4 minutes without touching it whenever it is searing. That way it can get a good crust. Searing the roast is not something you have to do, but it is something that really does help with the flavor and it helps keep the roast moist. And, sometimes when I'm in a rush, I don't do this, but it really did make a really good roast. So that's up to you whether you want to mess with searing it or not, but we're going to go ahead and finish getting a good crust on all the sides of this. If you wanted to, you could cut your roast in half or in thirds even, and that would make it cook a lot faster as well in your Instapot or pressure cooker. But mine is pre-programmed to a minimum and maximum amount of time. So I'm going to cook it for 2 different cycles, but on the second cycle, I'm going to add in my potatoes and carrots, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. So if you do decide to cut this in half or cut it into thirds, just sear all of the ends on it. Now that my roast is finished searing, I've removed it and set it on a plate, and I've chopped up an onion into wedge-sized pieces, and my pressure cooker is still on the saute function, and I'm going to start sauteing up these onions just until they start getting a little bit of char on them and they start becoming just a little bit more translucent. I'm not going to cook them all the way, and then once I finish doing that, I'm going to turn my Instapot off and I'm going to start adding in my broth. So I started with a cup of beef broth. Did end up adding another 1.5 cups or so I did about 2.5 to 3 cups total, but that's just because I'm serving this over mashed potatoes and I want to make sure that I have plenty of liquid to make a gravy over my mashed potatoes. So if you don't want that, then don't worry about adding more, just do about a cup. And then I'm going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce to this, and I'm just going to stir this up and I'm just going to scrape the bottom of this to make sure I get all the flavor bits off the bottom of the pot. Once I finish with that, I'm going to take my roast and I'm going to add it back into the broth, and then I did just a little bit of thyme leaves and I just did a couple shakes of that. Didn't measure it, I just added how much I wanted, and then once I finish that, this is ready to close up and start cooking. Feel free to add any seasonings that you want to this. Once you've got your lid locked into place, make sure that your switch is set to seal, and then I'm going to turn on my Instapot and I'm going to pick the beef lamb function and I'm going to turn the time all the way up to 55. That's the highest that mine will go, the beef function anyways. And then my timer screen is going to spin, and once it reaches pressure and that pin pops up, it's going to start counting down time. Once that's almost done, I'm going to start preparing my potatoes. So I've got about 3 regular sized potatoes here that I have peeled, and I'm just going to start chopping these up into chunky pieces. If you cut these down too small, they're going to turn to mush in your Instapot. So that's why I'm just leaving mine a little bit bigger, and some of these are, not exactly the same size, but they're close enough where they will cook around the same time. And then once we finish doing that, my pressure cooker has finished cooking, and so I'm going to release the pressure on it. Just do not open it until your pin drops and all the pressure has released, and mine has, so I'm going to unlock the lid and open it up. At this point, I do cut my roast in half, and then I'm going to add some baby carrots, and I'm just leaving those, the shape they are and the size. I'm not cutting them down any. And then I'm just going to sprinkle a handful of those in there. I'm also going to add my potatoes in. I'm not going to stir them in. I'm just going to add them around the top and let them fall where they do. Once I get finished with that, I'm going to put the lid back on this, and then I am going to lock it into place and switch to the seal position and make sure that it went all the way into seal. And then once that's done, I'm going to pick the beef function and I'm going to cook this for 40 more minutes. We're going to release the steam again all the way like we did earlier and all the pressure, and then we're going to unlock the lid once that pin drops and open this up, and everything should be fully cooked and tender. Feel free to thicken this with cornstarch or brown gravy mix. My roast is so tender that it's just falling apart. My potatoes are fork tender as well. And then my carrots are very tender. They're not mushy, but they are very tender. But I'm just going to take a fork and shred up my roast beef the rest of the way. And that's it. This is ready to serve. I served mine over mashed potatoes and it was delicious and full of flavor. Thanks for watching. Bye.